everybody, welcome back for another video. My name is Tanya, for those of you that are new here, and I am a watercolor artist and a furniture painter, so you will be seeing both types of tutorials on this channel. But today I decided to paint for you in watercolors, and pine trees are my favorite, and with the holidays right around the corner, I thought it'd be really nice for you to see a video, a tutorial on how to paint one. So I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so I've got my watercolor paper, my water, I've got a 1/4" Dagger watercolor brush, and I've got my Winsor Newton watercolors and Daniel Smith watercolors. So I'll be letting you know what colors I'm using as I'm going along if you wanted to follow along with me, but basically we're just going to be using greens and browns today. We're going to be painting a pine tree, and it's not necessarily going to be a Christmas tree. I'm not going to be putting ornaments on this. I'm going to be putting like little pine cones on this. So it'll be kind of like an outside pine tree, not necessarily a Christmas tree. All right, so start by getting your paintbrush wet, and I'm going to be picking up some burnt umber here, and I'm just going to be doing a line just kind of like for the trunk. And you can start anywhere you want. You can make this tree as big as you want, as small as you want, and just make the trunk part a little bit thicker as you get down to the bottom of the tree. So you want your branches to be a little bit smaller at the top and come down and be a little bit longer towards the bottom, because it is a pine tree and they're kind of a triangle shape. And you don't have to make the branches exactly the same on both sides of the trunk. You can make them different. And just make a few here and there going down, just kind of so it guides you a little bit. You can always come in and put more branches later. And if you want a few branches actually coming off those main ones, you could do that as well. Okay, so that's about all I'm going to do at this point. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to take my, I think this is my Viridian, Daniel Smith Viridian. And again, you can use any kind of green you want. It doesn't have to be exactly the greens that I'm using. And with my Dagger brush, I'm going to be pressing very, very lightly. So I'm going to get a really fine line. So it's like the little pine needles coming off those branches. And then I'm going to pick up also some of my sap green, because I like a little bit of two different greens in here. It just looks a little bit more realistic if you use a couple different shades of green. And you can always add more pine needles as you continue on with your tree. So maybe don't put too many at first, and you can always step back and look at it when you're halfway done and see where you think you need a few more. And you don't have to use a Dagger brush. You can use any kind of round, small brush you want. It's just that this is what I happen to have today. And I'm going to continue down my tree. And see how my tree is a little bit two-tone right now with the Viridian green and the sap green? It just gives it a nice look, because it gives it a little bit of more interest. If you just used one color, green, it'd just be a little bit more flat looking. This just gives it a little bit more of a pop if you use a couple different shades of green. And right now you're just going to be putting in the pine needles on the branches that you made. And we can always go in and add more if we think that our tree needs to be filled a little bit more. I've seen trees that are really nice and full of needles, and others that are pretty bare. So it just depends on what kind of tree, what kind of look you're going for. And if you feel like you need to turn your page, when doing the needles on the other side of the tree. It's always easier, I'm a righty, so it's easier to do the needles on the right side of the tree, and it's not as easy to do them on the left side of the tree. So if you feel like you need to turn your page just to get that natural movement of your hand, otherwise going up to the left for me just doesn't seem very natural. So you can always turn your page, it's no big deal. It's just to make you a little bit more comfortable. And if you want to alternate some of your Viridian green, I didn't put that much Viridian green down on the bottom yet, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a little bit here and there. Even just on top of my sap green, I'm just going to go ahead and add some of the Viridian. And the Viridian is a little bit of a darker pine color, pine green. So I'm going to be doing that more on the inside of my tree, and I'm going to leave more of the sap green, which is a little bit more of a limey green, olivey green. I'm going to leave that, put that on the outside of my trees, just so it's like shadowed. It gives it the effect that the inside of the tree is a little bit more shadowed, just because it's a darker green, if that makes sense. And then you can start going in and filling. And you can overlap your greens. You can start filling in more towards, like right now, see how I've got like the branches, then I've got all this negative space in between. You can go ahead and start filling that in. You don't even need to make more brown branches at this point. You can just start filling it in just directly with the green. And I would just add a little bit at a time, because you don't want, it's easier to add than take away, especially with watercolor. You can't really take away. Once you put it down, it's pretty much there. You can always lighten it up, but you definitely can't get back the weight of your paper. So I would start really, really slowly and just look at this, stand back for a second and look and see where you exactly want more pine needles. So like this is a big negative space here. I'm just going to go ahead and add a branch right there. And again, I'm not adding more brown at this point. And I think it needs a little bit more of that Viridian green, so I'm going to go ahead and just fill it in here and there. And also keep an eye on your triangle. You want to make sure that your branches, because sometimes when you focus on one area, it's really easy to get lost and not look at the whole picture anymore. So you might be making some of your branches a little bit bigger on the top and smaller on the bottom, and then your tree's not going to look very good. It's going to look like a straight, rectangle tree. You want it to keep that triangle shape. So always just kind of step back, from what you're doing and look and make sure that you still have that triangle shape. I'm going to add a few more in here. And if you feel that you need to add a few more of those brown branches, the burnt umber that we did, you can always add them in later. Just let your tree dry a little bit and add a few here and there. We're actually going to be adding in a few pine cones, so that's going to be pulling some of the brown outside of the tree as well once we add those pine cones. So it'll be balanced. All right, so that's basically our tree at the moment. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in, actually I'm gonna lighten up this. I'm just gonna go over my trunk a little bit and just lighten it up. It was just a little too dark for me. So all you have to do is just put a little bit of water on your brush, go over it, dab it off. See how that lightened it up? All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to be putting in some pine cones. So I'm just taking the tip of my Dagger brush and I'm dipping it into the same burnt umber that I did with the branches. And I'm gonna be putting in, since this tree is kind of far away, you know, it's not a very close-up detailed tree, I'm just gonna be adding in a few pine cones here and there. They're just kind of like little dots. I'm just putting in little dots, like a little cluster of dots, just to give it a little bit of texture. And if you think that it's a little too dark, which I think some of these are a little too dark for me right now, just go back in with your paper towel and lift them up a little bit, and it'll lighten them up. There. Now I'm adding mostly the pine cones on the outside of the branches. You can add them wherever you want, but I'm going to be putting them on mostly just the outside. A few on the inside too, just so it doesn't look too perfect. You do want a few on the inside. And you can add as many as you want. You don't have to get too, it doesn't have to be too crowded with pine cones. I just want to add a few here and there. There. And if you want it to be the longer pine cones, then you would just make the pine cones a little bit longer. They wouldn't be as, like I made the little round pine cones, but there's those pine cones that are really long, so you would just have them hang down a little bit more. All right, so I'm gonna be adding in a little bit of brown down here, just to give it a little bit of a shadow under the tree. And I used brown. You can put a little bit of green in there if you want to, like it's got a little reflection off the snow, depending if your pine tree is, you know, in dirt or in the snow or, you know, whatever, covered by grass, whatever. So, but I just put in a little brown and a little bit of green down there. I'm going to be taking my metallics, and I'm going to be putting in a little bit of a metallic paint in there just for fun. I got these Arteza brand, they're the metallic watercolors. I got it in the 24, and it comes in this cute little case, and that's what they look like. So, oh, and they also give you some swatches here, so you know exactly what they look like. They're already labeled for you, and you just go on and put them on. And then I also had it on black paper as well, which I can't find that right now. Oh, here it is. So it shows you what the colors look like on the white paper and the black paper. So as you can see, this row and this row are exactly the same colors, but it looks so much different on the black paper than it does the white paper. So it just depends on what look you're going for. So it's just kind of a nice little chart to follow along, because right now I'll be like, oh, I really like this green on my painting. So I'll just see, oh, okay, that's lettuce green, and then I'll just go over and I'll pick the lettuce green from here. So I know exactly what color I'm using. It's kind of nice. So I just want to throw a little bit of metallic on my paint, on my painting. It's not completely dry yet, but I'm just going over with some of this green here. I want to cover up a little bit of my branches. And the metallic paints, I haven't worked with them very long, but I love the look of just a little bit of sparkle. I don't like when it's the whole painting is obviously sparkled. That's a little too much. But I do like doing my watercolor paintings in just the regular watercolors, and then coming in at the end with just a little bit of metallic on top of them to give it a little bit of a sparkle here and there. But this part is optional, especially if you don't have metallic watercolors. Don't worry about it. You don't have to do this part. I just thought it'd be a little fun to add a little bit of a shine. And then I think I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take for my ground this really light blue, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of a metallic blue underneath my tree, just like that. Perfect. And then at this point, if you wanted to, you can go over your pine cones. If you think your pine cones aren't dark enough or they're too dark, you can start changing them up a little bit. I'm gonna add a little bit of darker pine cones in some areas. Not all of them, but some of them, just to give it a little bit of pop here and there. So I'm just going over again with my burnt umber, and I'm just adding some darker pine cones here and there. There. Now, if you wanted to add a few more, let's say you wanted a few more branches coming down because your trunk is a little too long here, you could definitely go in and add some. So I'll show you. I'm just pulling in my sap green, and I'm gonna make a few branches coming down this way. So that's what I'm saying, like, you always wanna step back from your painting and see where you need to add a little bit more. So it's, like I said, it's easier to add than it is to take away. So do it in small little sections. And as you get to the bottom of the tree, the branches start to hang down a little bit, like versus up here, they're standing, you know, on an angle, on a 45-degree angle. And then as you come down the tree, they're gonna be sagging a little bit. So you want them to be facing the other way, coming down, more towards the ground. And you can always dab a little bit more green here and there if you want to cover up some of those brown, the brown branches that we did at the beginning. And if you want to skip the step of the brown branches and just go straight to green branches, you could do that too. I like adding a little bit of brown. It gives a little bit more dimension. But you definitely could make the branches at the beginning green if you want to. But right now I'm looking to see some of these branches are a little bit standing out too much. And so I'm just gonna go in and I'm just gonna blend them in a little bit, just so it kind of flows with my branch a little bit more. There. Beautiful. There you go. That's an easy little pine tree. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you liked it and learned a little something. And if you did like it, please give me a thumbs up. And you can also subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Have a great day. Bye.